Hello everyone. Happy Saturday or whenever you are watching this. We're going to do a quick deck tech before the challenge here on the May 11th here. Modern, that is. Pyro Prison is the deck. We're going to go ahead and get into that. We normally stream though, and if you're on YouTube and interested in seeing our stream, the link will be down in the description below for where you can find myself on Twitch. There will be the deck list in the description as well, and how to follow me on Twitter just to get updates when I do change the schedule a little bit, go live, or change that. That being said, let's get into the deck tech here right before the challenge. So you have the deck in front of you. We're going to go through it just from the very beginning. If you do not want to watch this and you would like to get into the games, go ahead and jump to the next video. All that being said, there is a mini deck tech, a little bit of talk of it while I was waiting for the challenge to begin. What do we have in front of us? We have 21 lands and 9 ritual effects. The 21 plus 9 is 30 of the 60 cards, so that gives us 50% ratio of mana. Lands, we have Cavern of Souls, and this is a utility card to prevent our creatures from being countered. We have a Gemstone Caverns. This will help us with those that we lose the dice roll, and this will give us a land on turn 0. Some basic mountains here, nothing to say about those. Ramunap Ruins for 2 damage, possibly to our opponent, and a Zhalfirin Void, which is a scry land that just adds colorless mana. Kind of gives us that extra scry. Ritual-wise, Desperate Ritual here, Pyretic Ritual, and Simian Spirit Guide. There's no real reason to run 4 over Pyretics versus Desperates. You can make the option whatever you may have, just as long as there's 5 plus the 4 Simian Spirit Guides. Every now and then, Desperate Ritual Splice becomes something you can do. It's very rare, though. At this point, we would get into the deck where I would tell you we have 12 lock pieces. These would be Blood Moon to lock out our opponent's non-basic lands, Ensnaring Bridge to prevent our opponent from attacking us and killing us through creatures, and Chalice of the Void as a way to counter 1 mana, 2 mana spells, typically maybe 0 mana spells or something else, giving red that opportunity to control what our opponent can cast. You'll notice, though, there's only 11, and that's because one of them is sitting here in the sideboard, and that's for Karn to go ahead and get. We found that statistically, Ensnaring Bridge is not as important right now, although that could change depending on your meta. Next section is the Planeswalkers. We have 2 Chandra, Torch of Defiance. She's utility, giving us enough mana to cast some of our bigger spells. She also is card advantage with her +1, exiling cards and doing damage. Her game-ending ability, the Emblem, deals 5 damage to any target creature, and every now and then you do use her just as a simple -3 to do 4 damage to a creature, kind of as a utility removal spell. Chandra herself can win the game by herself, but recently she's been paired up with Karn the Great Creator, which is a new print here, new card joining the Red Prison, the Pyro Prison group here. Karn is a Stony Silence on a Planeswalker, so not on a stick, but on a Planeswalker. This is really important for us because we would like to close the game out very quickly. This comboed with Mycosynth Lattice is a way to hardlock the game out, which I'm sure some of you may have already heard at this point. So how does Karn and Mycosynth Lattice work? We're going to go fetch it with Karn's other ability. So -2, and you can go get something from outside the game. So you're able to basically create a wish board or a set of cards that you can obtain from outside the game in your sideboard, or that are exiled during the game by other cards. We'll talk about the rest of the sideboard in just a moment. We have the Pyro aspect of the deck. A lot of people call this Prison or Red Prison. We like to call it Pyro Prison because of this exact section here. We have a set of 9 creatures. Typically we have 4 Rabblemasters, and there's nothing different here. We have 4 of those. We have Walking Ballista as a utility creature, probably is more on the utility side, but can tag Planeswalkers, creatures, or our opponent. Can also attack. We have a set of Legion Warboss, and typically we would be running 4 of these. However, we're giving a different card a debut here, but we have Rabblemaster Light here with Legion Warboss. The final goblin of our arsenal is Krenko, 10th Street Kingpin, and this is also a new one from the latest set. Krenko is a bit slower, however, he can go extremely wide. You attack, and then by the second turn, he's creating 2, and then 3, and so on creatures. This gets exceptionally large, and then if you have a Rabblemaster or a Warboss, they're pumping the creatures accordingly, and you can just overwhelm your opponent. So Krenko got the nod this time. Utility-wise, we have Abrades and Slagstorms. We are light on board wipe kind of things, Anger and Slagstorm. We are a little bit weak to something that will go super wide initially. But we do have the way to pick off things and pick off some pesky artifacts as well. It also, Abrade will combo with a card in our sideboard. So let's talk about the sideboard here. We're going to split this out into a set of creatures that we have. Our removal, our extra removal. And then I'll talk about the wish board and the non-wish board in terms of our artifacts. So real quick, we talked about we're a little bit weak to wide strategies. Anger the Gods is here to correct that, allowing us to kill small creatures that would quickly beat us down. You bring this in for burn, you would bring this in for something like humans, merfolk, and so on. If you're not needing to wipe the board or there are not a lot of pesky creatures in your way, then you may be looking at the aggro suite here. We have Hazoret the Fervent, Mom Dog as we like to call her. She is very good against green, black, or Jund decks. As long as she's not discarded, she's extremely difficult to kill because she's indestructible. We have Stormbreath Dragon for the blue-white or other counter type of matchups that typically run white as their removal suite, as it has for protection from white. We also have an additional Krenko here, just to add a little bit of extra lower end curve. Krenko is legendary though, so keep that in mind. You don't want to run too many. As a random addition, and probably the wild card slot of this sideboard, we do have an Akroma Angel of Fury. This can't be countered. Protection from blue, protection from white. It can be tapped down with Cryptic, but otherwise blue-white type of decks will have a time trying to get rid of this. Now, keep in mind it is 8 mana, but in our experience, games go for 10, 12 turns if you can't quite beat them with your initial goblins. And so it's in the testing phase. Slot in your choice of card for Akroma or whatever you may be deciding to play, but that is our wildcard slot. Wishboard here is Mycosynth Lattice. This will be a hard lock with Karn, shutting down all those artifacts, the Stony Silence kind of piece here. So these two interact in such a way that you get that hard lock, and it kind of ends the game a lot quicker than maybe Chandra could do. So that's why we're actually a little bit heavier on the Karn side than Chandra. You have an Ensnaring Bridge to go grab in case of game 1 you need it. Game 2 or game 3 you have to make the call whether you want to bring that in or not based on how quick their opponent's creatures may be coming at you. Finally, on the Wishboard side, there's Liquid Metal Coating. Liquid Metal Coating turns something into an artifact. This can be comboed with Abrade, which can destroy an artifact. For example, a Primeval Titan could become an artifact. An enchantment could become an artifact, and we can use Abrade as a removal. The other way, and typically how we're trying to do this, is trying to get Karn out on turn 2, maybe even turn 3, very quickly, get a Liquid Metal Coating, and turn a land into an artifact. Now, this doesn't seem very good until you read Karn's +1 ability, which we haven't discussed, which says that a target artifact becomes a creature, and its converted mana cost will become what it is. So a two converted mana cost artifact, example Torpor, would become a 2/2. Lands don't have converted mana cost, becomes a Stone Rain. So you get to clear those out. Liquid Metal Coating basically allows us to remove any lands, and with Blood Moon you're able to target some of those basic lands and keep them really off of their colors. Finally, we have a set of Torpor Orbs, which is great for any of those ETB creatures. Primeval Titan, Deputy of Detention are just to name a couple, but there are plenty out there. Eternal Witness, Flicker Wisps, etc., etc. So those will shut those off. We have Grafdigger's Cage that can be fetched if needed from Karn, but is for those Collected Company Chord type of decks or other decks that are bringing things in from the library and or the graveyard. So Dredge would be a great example of that. This is a sort of wish target. Karn can go get this and clear a graveyard. That's maybe a problem, but it can also be brought in for those matchups. Again, Dredge or something that's interacting with your graveyard, a Gristlebrand type of deck that's trying to reanimate out of the graveyard. This is just another utility against that. This one can be determined on, do I need it immediately or not? And then you can either leave it in the sideboard or bring it in for the matchup. That'll do it for the quick deck tech, kind of an overview. It's a little longer than I maybe wanted it, but I know a lot of people have asked for something like this. So here you go. This is the list. We'll be running in the challenge, and we'll see how we do. We'll see you in the next video.